You are now listening to the Bodds podcast with your hosts, the Odds Fellow, Punisher Picks, LockBets.net, and your announcer, Guns Picks. So time to strap in, dads. It's time to join the father figures in the Dad Bodds podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to the Dad Bodds podcast, episode number 68. And we have a very special guest that has joined us straight off the live. We have Shark and Water Sports. You know him from NBA Talk with J Money. You know him from Shark and the Gun, from the college football show, which is going to be continuing into 2022. I want to say hello to our very special guest, Shark and Water Sports. And I'm also joined by yours truly, the Odds Fellow, who is on an absolute tear with Old Man Who Bets in NFL football. What's going on, gentlemen?
Well, Odds Fellow, I got to say, I like the hat, and I also love the side elements of sound. It's a great look. You look like you're on the subway, and I feel that vibe. And Guns Picks, obviously. Shark and the Gun, Lock and a Rock, we shout you. It's coming back to the center. We have cheers up, fears down. It's going down. We're going to talk sports. We're going to talk life. We're going to go in there. And Odds Fellow, please talk, and let's absolutely dominate this one.
To have you here on a Tuesday, baby Tuesday, is the only way this show could go down, fellas. We got a live NBA play cooking. The Shark and Odds aligned on a little spot for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Let's finish here in the second half. So we'll watch that one. We'll keep our eyes on that while we talk about a lot of other fun across the NFL, across the NBA, and see what's going on. So it's a beautiful night, boys. Appreciate you joining me. And, we don't have the Punisher Picks here. He's battling the little thing we like to call COVID. And I just want to say that I am the stronger dad when it comes to COVID because I, too, had COVID, and I feel great right now. And I'm here. Shots fired.
Yeah, well, I think that's going to be coming my way. I already heard some half of my daughter's class is going through it right now and is probably going to be trickling into the Guns house. But I want to give one thing right now because I have a very special pick that is happening at 9 p.m. tonight, and I want to give that out to the people. It's going to be
Coming to you live from the Dad Bodds Studios. This is a Dad Bodds exclusive.
So Dad Bodds exclusive. This game is going to be tipping off at 9 p.m. I already have this as a full game, 1.5 unit play with Texas Tech -8. And I'm going to give the first half as well. Texas Tech -4.5 as the play. And let me tell you why. This team lost in an upset to Kansas State on Saturday. They are playing a revenge spot against Iowa State, which they lost by 2. This team has beaten Kansas. This team has beaten Baylor. This is one of the toughest teams in the Big 12. I think they bounce back here. Give me Texas Tech first half -4.5 as a play.
Shark, any comments? Sharp side?
Could not disagree. Obviously, Texas Tech, an absolute dark horse relentlessly in the Big 12, obviously going to the Final Four, I believe, a couple of years ago. Couldn't talk you off, to coin J Money's top term. Have not gone deep into it, but obviously we're in the New York Yankees World Series. I was just talking to Pun Picks in the chat privately. Baseball season will come in April, and we're in the heart of winter sports right now. But I think that's a beautiful thing that we're going to wait for. And guys, keep it going. Let's fucking go.
I think we should just get right into NFL talk. I mean, we had Wild Card Weekend, Super Wild Card Weekend, the first one of the NFL existence, and it didn't feel so damn super, did it? Because it seemed like we had maybe 1 or 2 games that were relatively close together. I know the Dallas Cowboys lost in dramatic fashion with a ref that was kind of sleeping behind the wheel 20 yards down the field to not touch the ball before it got hiked. And then you have the Patriots not showing up. You have the Pittsburgh Steelers not showing up. And you have the Arizona Cardinals not showing up. So for a system that you typically had underdogs that were covering 13 out of the last 18. You really didn't see it here, and you saw a little bit flip of the wheel. I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that, gentlemen, from what you saw this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think, a snapshot to what's going on in professional football right now. It's kind of like we talk about in college football, which of course would corroborate college football not having 8 teams in the playoff. There's just top 5, and then everybody else stinks. And you see that in the NFL right now. Of course, that's not the NFL model long term. There's usually a lot more parity. Of course, go back to 2008, Giants coming out of nowhere, Packers coming out of the wild card. Wild card teams can run the table. There's usually more parity in the NFL. College football, obviously different source, but I think it has come back to that center point, at least right now in 2022 here, January, is that there's just a massive talent gap in the league. And you went on there with my brother, obviously Jeff Sheesby, Old Man Who Bets, hell of a fucking podcast. You guys always do. But you guys made the comment and you said it, and it's not unreal. There is just this gap. So you saw this in the wild card weekend. You had blowouts across the board outside of course, unfortunately, it's Dallas Cowboys laying down at home. But I do think when you come back to the divisional round, we're going to see some tightening up here. And you see, obviously, Tennessee -3.5, Green Bay at home 6, Tampa Bay -3 short, obviously, revenge game there. A lot of things going on here. We talk about this all the time, and I'm going to throw it back to you. But, truthfully, when we look at NFL, I think it's more so matchup driven. And, Jeff always talks about DVOA. I think that's a really important point. It's not so much line reading like it is college basketball and NBA basketball. It's more so situational analysis. And let's fucking get in here.
Well, look, one thing on the trend, right? Trends are obviously you're going to see some regression over time. The more and more I was hearing some of those stats, it almost makes you flip and think the other way. At some point, this is going to come and get smacked back in the face, right? Some of those were large spreads. Jeff took them on the podcast. He laid 2 of those big spreads. I tended to stay away from those and go a little bit more towards the totals. But you had 5 home teams win, 5 favorites cover. The only one that lost was the Dallas Cowboys, and probably the toughest, tightest matchup between the two when you looked at it on paper. Yes, San Francisco snuck in. Yes, they were 6th seed, which was ridiculous when you looked at them from a DVOA standpoint. They were top 10, maybe as high as top 6 in the league from a DVOA standpoint. The rest of these matchups didn't come close to what that one was on paper, and that's what lived up to it, right? CBS got it right by putting it in the 4:30 slot. Troy Aikman wanted to cover it. He was bitching about it to Joe Buck during the earlier 1 p.m. game when he's like, get me out of Tampa and Philly. He wanted the Dallas game. It was a weird round, right? A lot of good storylines, but from a data standpoint, you could look at the spreads, you could look at the data. A lot of these teams just didn't match up well, right? A couple were rematches, and I think the rematches, which was even more telling, played out almost the exact same way that the first games did. And you saw that with Tampa and Philly, right? Because that Philly game during the regular season was a garbage backdoor cover on a 2-point conversion. And then you had the Chiefs who beat up the Steelers just a couple of weeks ago, right? It was the same thing again. So I do think now we've gotten out of that garbage football into what should be a great round. It starts with the quarterbacks, it starts with some of these franchises, and I'm looking forward to it, man. It's still 2 days of quality football.
I think what I found interesting, though, is it felt like very public on the sides, but it was definitely not public on the totals. I mean, you had a lot of unders that were hitting, and the public loves the overs. And I think the total that was not public was the Steelers game, and that thing went way over. So I think I think the total trend kind of stayed because you usually go unders in the wild card, but the sides definitely had a little bit of a continental shift, which when I see a trend that goes X amount to 1 or something like that, I always think like that thing's going to flip at some point, and then the bookmakers are going to get their cash back. But the books got hit a little bit, but they'll get it back at some point. But let's transition into the divisional round now that we got the garbage out of the way. We have some good matchups here. Starting with the game that's going to start at 4:30 on Saturday. We got the Bengals Titans. Anyone got any thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I mean, just jumping off what you said in terms of the totals, I think that's an interesting point. I always talk about this in terms of NBA basketball, but sometimes in NFL football, it's the same type of thing. You just see stock lines and you see unavailable lines to bet, really. And when you look at these games, I'm just going down the board right now, 47, 47.5, 48.5, and 55, of course, inflated Chiefs. And I just think you're going to be hovering on those zones. And if you go back to the previous round, a lot of those unders hit because of clustered outliers, not because the game actually flowed towards an under. So I do think as a snapshot to that, if we extrapolate to this round, we might see overs, forget the lines, just based on how the games flowed and outliered themselves in the previous round. I do think Tennessee here at home at 3.5 is just your really kind of shit box line. 3.5 obviously being the hook over where you want it to be at 3. If you bought that down to 3, you're probably inflating to 145. We're not talking 110, 120. We're talking 145, 150. They want that to hold there, and they're telling you it's going to be a tight game. I think this game is probably razor sharp. The one that I'm looking at, 8:15 Fox Lambeau Field, obviously here on Saturday night. I think the Niners could go in there and compete. I think +6 there is a great look. And you got any thoughts on this one?
No, I mean, just before we get into that, I think a couple comments on the totals. Another thing I think everyone wants to think about with the playoffs is cold weather, and they want to go back to 1950s and 1960s and 1970s football. Like what they don't realize is, these guys are fucking warm as hell. The fields have, heating grids underneath them, right? The Dallas Cowboys are traveling with their benches to Washington to take care of themselves. Like these guys know what they're doing. I think that cold weather, like that matters when it's, maybe below, -0 degrees, right? With wind chill, and it's like ridiculous. Or the wind is really the factor that could hit that thing, not just the temperature itself, right? So just another thing to keep in mind as you're looking at these totals, like the odds makers are factoring in if it's fucking cold. They've got that figured out. So don't sweat that and just, kind of look at some of the other data points. I think with the Niners and the Packers, that line has ballooned up. That thing opened at +4.5, I believe, and got steam. Now, I don't know if that's Jimmy G news. I know we were talking a little bit about before we went on. I don't know that really matters. Is he worth 1.5 or 2 points? To me, that's surprising. Obviously Trey Lance and a rookie quarterback, he didn't look great during the year, but what that team wants to do is run the ball. And that's where you kind of, I think, attack that Packers defense. That keeps Aaron Rodgers off the field. I do lean Niners early on in this one, but I'm going to watch to see what that line does, right? Already with that big movement from 4.5 to 6, it's going to be interesting to see where it settles. Maybe it even gets a little bit bigger. I mean, if that goes to 7, sign me up.
Guns, just if you don't mind, just me jumping in.
Go ahead.
I do think if Jimmy G has some sort of injury, that of course corrupts the entire environment.
Right.
And there's no cap on the game at this point. Trey Lance, as much as he's definitely a project going forward, in my opinion, is definitely not a playoff caliber quarterback. Yeah. And I think if he's in there, it's going to become basically college football. And they're going to be run and shoot the whole thing, and it's just going to be nonsense. And I think Green Bay could clean this game up, and it would probably go under at that point. I would see like maybe 32 to 12 or some nonsense. But we don't know what's going on with Jimmy G, I don't think. Guys, do we have any information on this?
I was hearing about the Jimmy G thing earlier with the odds fell. I didn't really know he had an injury in that game because there wasn't really anything that showed. I know about the Nick Bosa injury with the concussion. I think that may have a little bit predicated into the line a little bit. So that was my thought.
That could affect the line movement.
Yeah. It's not something that I want to buy yet. I kind of want to see how, Thursday, Friday is Jimmy G practicing. Is his shoulder okay? Does he look good?
If Jimmy G is playing, but Bosa and some of those other guys that got hurt on defense,
does that change
it? Does that change it for you?
I wouldn't play if Bosa doesn't play. I think it's a detriment because you have to put pressure on Rodgers in some way, shape, or form. And I think Nick Bosa is absolutely humongous to that pressure. It takes away a couple of even for his teammates, like they have to account for him. It's no different than with the LA Rams in their pass rush. It's like if you take away their top star, they're out. It's the same thing. So I think Nick Bosa, they survived, in my opinion, that game without Nick Bosa. They're not going to get so lucky if they have to go to Green Bay in 0-degree weather. Who knows what the wind's going to be. I do like the 49ers currently, but that's predicated on if Nick Bosa and Jimmy G play in the game.
Yeah, just keeping on this game here as we obviously go to center. Certain games have more access. I think this is one of them. When you watch Jimmy G in the pocket, when he was playing for the Patriots, actually, when Tom Brady had the suspension, he played 3 or 4 games. He was always the same guy. He's never changed. He's never unwavered. He's a great pocket passer. He has great vision. He has great quick decisiveness in the pocket. And you saw it last week. The guy can sling it to small windows in the middle and on the edge. And I think if he plays, this is an access point to the max. If he's not playing, as I said, this could be a complete blowout. But I do think, in terms of what you guys are saying, the Green Bay run game is going to be something that is unnoticed here to a certain degree. Because people always talk about Aaron Rodgers, but the run game is Aaron Jones, and this guy is an absolute fucking dog. And he just pounds the center of the field and opens it up. And I think this is something that people, we talk about this. I talk about this all the time with my brother Jeff, but Patriots football for years was Tom Brady, but some of their best playoff games were the run game and defense. And I think you might actually see props actually coming on the run game with Green Bay here.
They do get Bakhtiari back too.
Yeah.
With their big old offensive tackle who missed
huge.
a lot of games this year. I think he played a number of snaps against the Lions in week 18 just to kind of get reps and get comfortable. So you should see a full force out of him. Somehow Rodgers has been doing that without him all year. One point, just going back to the DVOA thing we were talking about before and how highly ranked those Niners were as a 6 seed. The Niners come in at,
I just looked at that too.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, just
they're very high offensively, they're high defensively, and the weak point is Green Bay is like ranked 22nd in DVOA
on defense, right? So they're pretty close if you look at overall DVOA, right? Total DVOA, the Niners are 6th, Green Bay is 9th. Again, this is first seed versus the other seed, right? Just think about that little discrepancy.
And look how they defend against the run. I think they're ranked 30th in DVOA against the run. So it is a huge factor. But like I said,
a little
like
mismatch, right?
we've repeated ourselves.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's like you need Jimmy G and you need Nick Bosa. Yeah. It's like if we got Jimmy G, I may be able to sacrifice Nick Bosa in that one. But I mean, going into the Sunday slate, I mean, we have the Rams going against the Buccaneers. You got Tom Brady making his back-to-back run. He did look good against the Eagles, but I think we could put the three of us together and get another 8 guys and make a run at the Eagles the way they played last week. So is there any thoughts on this game after seeing both teams perform very successful? Matt Stafford versus Tom Brady.
Honestly, in terms of this game, I think the over is probably the best look. The Bucs obviously went under in round 1, 31-15. That back door, even to get to 31-15, it was basically a 31-point game. Of course, the Eagles scored, I think, 15 unanswered in the fourth quarter. But I think when you come in here, the Rams in round 1, obviously in a divisional matchup, not a lot against. And I think you will get some against here, which will inflate the total. 48.5 for me would be the top look here. Having obviously not gone into immense detail, but have you gone into this one?
Not completely, but what's interesting here is these two teams did play. So I think in this round, you don't get too many rematches. You get the Bills, I guess half, right? 50-50. You get the Bills and Chiefs were a rematch, and the Rams and Buccaneers played each other pretty early. And to your point on the total, I don't know. I'm trying to see what week that was.
This is a revenge spot for Tom Brady too, right?
34-24. That was
they lost
4,
That's
I
big
believe.
time total,
So
right?
again, big time total, high scoring, right? And that thing kind of opens, high right up there again, soaring, close to 48.5, 49. So I could see that. I think with these two teams, if I remember correctly in this game, I'm trying to pull up the box score. Yeah, I'm looking at it now. 0-0 at the end of the first quarter. 0-0 at the end of the first quarter, and then came with that score. I remember being on a text thread with some of you guys looking at some of those live totals and trying to figure out what that game was. So keep that in mind too while you're watching the game live betting it. Even if it gets off to a slow start, it might not matter, right? So you might get a deflated total that you can jump all over. That kind of sails over late.
Yeah, and Guns, obviously, I'll throw it back to you in a half second, but I think that's a great point on live betting NFL in general. The first quarter is always lackluster in terms of points. It's just the opening kick, you have bad field position, the game is unadjusted, and then it flows from there. And that's why people sometimes, we always talk about like people thinking like it's rigged, the back door. It's not rigged, it's not back door, it's the actual flow of the game. It's not supposed to come front and center in terms of points from the kick. It's supposed to flow through the chaos zone from 1 to 30 and then repeat in the second half. So just something to keep in mind when you guys think, rigged or not. It's not rigged. It's just the flow of the game. Guns?
Yeah, so, I mean, yeah, when you look at the Rams were kind of like hugging the over on this one. They actually slowed the game down in the second half because they could. It ended up hitting under. Same thing with the Tampa Bay Bucks. But they were going against offenses that weren't really doing anything. You need 2 offenses to get over a total. Seeing the things sit at like 48.5. The one thing I would probably check at the end of the week is like you had this whole issue with the weather in Tampa. Is like, is it going to be windy? Is it going to be rainy? I mean, what's it going to be like for the kickers? What's it going to be like for the passing? Both teams love to pass. Actually, it was kind of like seeing the LA Rams kind of like really extend their run game. I think they ran ran the ball like over 60% of the time. Bringing back their top running back from an ACL injury when he wasn't supposed to come back all season. That was kind of remarkable seeing him out there. But you're not going to do that against the Bucs. You're going to have to pass the ball. Bucs are like one of the top rushing defenses in the league.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be this. If I had any lean on this one, I'm not even going to. I would think this is a revenge spot for Tom Brady, and in Tom Brady and revenge spots, typically, especially playing at home, he's going to have the advantage there. But if there's any side I'd like on this one, it'd probably be the over. I think it's 48.5 right now. So I'd probably lean more over than side. So
and even like just continuing on that as a corroboration point as I flow in the mind here, I do think these totals as they clustered to unders in round one, the Bengals game is coming to mind immediately. That game should have gone over. When you get small window variance, and people always talk about this in my channel, it's just like the market. You don't want to necessarily cap the market, but sometimes you can cap the market. And when the market clusters in bizarre outliers, it should come back to neutral averages. And like this 48.5, like this is probably not going to be like a Big 12 showdown, like 42-38, right? But I do think this could actually cluster in the other direction late. And we could get a couple late touchdowns to get this over. So just a comment. And I think that's probably the top look of the game. So.
All right. So we got the last game on the slate. Probably what everyone thinks is going to be a shootout. I'm not sure about that, but we have the Bills going against the Chiefs. It's a rematch of early in the season where the Bills were on a rebound. They ended up winning the game. It was a high scoring game. And now they're facing each other, not in the AFC Championship like they were last year. They're facing each other in the divisional round. This, to me, this total just seems it's total's 55 right now. It did shoot up from 52 to 55. I honestly, from my side, when the team scores a bunch of points the week before in a playoff game, they usually regress the next time. So I'm leaning under on this one. I want to pass it to you, Shark. Do you have any thoughts on this game?
I do. And I think your comment is absolutely spot on. However, I do worry about the line just being razor sharp because I do think in these environments, again, like I made the comment, the back door was open for unders in round one. This just speaks to me at being right around that where you just can get garbage touchdowns, which, of course, this is NFL football. And we talk about NFL football always being in the box, 17 games. Now we have one game. It's even further inside of the box. Anything can happen. And we always talk about this. The back door is egregiously open. 55 for me, I would actually lean towards less points, but I do think this line is just terror zone, basically. And
yeah, what I've been doing late in the regular season, and I dabbled in it a little bit in the playoffs too, is I'll either play the full game total and the first half total and split it and do a half unit on each, or I'll just kind of play the first half total. It speaks to what we talked about with the Bucs and the Rams before. I did it. I ended up keying in on the first half total in that Steelers and Chiefs game the other night. I would make that pick over and over again because if you look at the points scored by the Pittsburgh Steelers over and over again, it's been pathetic. The only reason that thing went over and the Chiefs ended up covering in the first half is because Big Ben and the Steelers got the ball back with like a minute 30 left and they couldn't sustain anything to run out the clock. So they gave the ball back in under 30 seconds. Chiefs turned around and got a ridiculous touchdown to blow the over and cover the spread. So first half under here could be interesting. Again, speaks to how these first quarters start. Speaks to the environment a little bit. That's a play for me. I think just at this game in general, it's so interesting because you have, these teams are coming off the AFC Championship game last year. I think the Chiefs won 38-24. Then during the regular season, the Bills come around and smack them 38-20. So these games haven't really even been too close, right? They've both been one-sided. Do we get that here? Or do we get a closer, tighter matchup in the trilogy? These last three could be interesting.
Yeah, and just keeping on that point, going on the side, I do think the Bills, of course, shout Lockbats. I think he's in the chat, but if he's not, having a great date tonight on a suddenly not so casual Tuesday, baby Tuesday. But
he's paying attention. I've seen him.
Okay. But I know he's a huge Bills guy, and I know he's not a Bills fan, but he's a Bills guy.
A huge Bills supporter. Yeah.
Excuse me. But I do think when you look at this, we've talked about this now for the last 16 to 18 months privately amongst the three of us, and of course, Lockbets in the chat. I think there's a coronation factor coming with the Bills. And you look at what the Bills did mid-season, I think they just got bored. And I think it was hard to figure out how to play 17 games, an added game, of course, into January before we're getting in there. And I think this team is ready to go. And I think we've talked about this all the time. But KC is not as good as people think they are. And the line is speaking to that. -2 historically is very short. And I think it's very short for a reason. I think what you saw against the Patriots is indicative of what the Bills are capable of. Of course, the Bills did lose to the Patriots in the regular season at home, and they came back and had one of the best offensive performances in playoff history. So that just speaks to that complacency in the middle of an elongated regular season. I think the Bills could come in here and win this game. I think they could come in here and win this game with authority. I think people are a little bit too high, still thinking Patrick Mahomes, Super Bowl, run and gun, commercials, whatever. Josh Allen is that guy. And I can see the Bills winning this game. Guns?
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point there. It's like if you actually go look at the stats of how they performed, like the Bills play better on the road. It's like that's kind of like where their sweet spot has been all season. I was like, and granted, like everybody looks at that record against playoff teams. It's like, but when they actually get on the road, and like you saw with the Patriots, they actually played better on the road. They went to this playoff game and they actually demolished their rival and made them look silly. So, I mean, I like the Bills in this spot. I think this is, like everyone said, the revenge game was earlier in the season. I think this might be the revenge game for them. And really, nothing that I saw from KC against the Steelers really stuck out to me as being, oh my God, they look absolutely like the Chiefs of old. It was like they were down 7-0 with 6 minutes left in the second quarter. I was like, but the Steelers are just not equipped to like handle. I mean, the defense was on the field probably 3/4 of the game at that point. I was like, but now you've got a Bills offense that can actually put up points. You have a Bills defense that is like top 5 as far as pass defense is concerned. Their weakness is the rush. I don't think that's going to be a problem for the Bills because, Pat Mahomes is going to want to wing the ball to Tyreek Hill. He's going to wing the ball to Kelsey. That's what he wants to do. He doesn't want to run the ball and try to play, clock control. I think this is a great spot for the Bills to really get over here. And, we may be, hopefully, knock on wood, we'll see how the matchup is. Could we see the Bills in the Super Bowl? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would make sense. And again, like we talk about things that are in NFL football, you have to always zoom out. And it's something that people don't understand in terms of actual prognostication is how far you have to zoom out. It could be multiple seasons. And I think the Niners are a great example of that. They went to the Super Bowl. They had COVID, no fans out in Levi's Stadium, a bunch of chaos. All of a sudden, now the Niners are good again. People forgot this team, if you actually went back, only 20 games, which in NBA basketball is 1/4 of the season. This team was far better than the Cowboys. So now you come back, it's not that surprising. And you look at the Bills again. I think this team, if you zoom out, it's just a huge upward movement point. So I think it's a great look, and we're going to finalize that. I know you guys are in the chat probably about to throw a fucking 5-unit banger on this, but we're very convincing. But this is our initial speculation. So don't throw your bankroll on this.
We're gathering intel.
We're gathering all the intel now. I was like, I guess we just kind of like ran down the slate a little bit, gave you some insight. It's still early, and we have to see what the injury reports say and what the weather report is. Is it going to be snow? Is it going to be whatever? But that's our insight right now. And I think if it's up to you, Oz, do you want to do a little Capper breakdown?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's get in
to a little thing we call Dad Bod's Capper Breakdown.
It is time for the Dad Bod's Capper Breakdown.
Oh, yeah. The Dad Bod's Capper Breakdown, powered by the Dad Bod's YouTube channel. And we will in the future, have a sponsor once we get the package, but we'll save that for a later date. So I'm going to start with you, Odds Fellow. Do you have a lean on the NBA tomorrow?
I do. I don't have odds totally out, so we're just looking at kind of the early slate. But I think one good spot here, and just a team that's going to get outmatched, is the Orlando Magic going to visit the Philadelphia 76ers. And one thing I love to do with this 76ers team is get in their head a little bit and get them coming back home after a lackadaisical performance, which they had the other night on Monday, January 17th, getting beat up by the Washington Wizards in the DC area, 117-98. So usually speaks to a pretty good first quarter or first half spot for those Sixers. They're probably going to be favored by a decent amount on the full game total, which, again, might not be a bad look. They beat up on the Magic 116-106 back on January 5th. So not that long ago. Far superior team when you look at it roster wise, right? The Magic are 1-9 in their last 10. They're 8-37 overall. The Sixers are battling 6th in the Eastern Conference, but they're getting a little healthier. It'll be interesting to see if they get Shake Milton or Tybalt back. I don't think it actually matters as long as you get a healthy, motivated Joel Embiid out there and you have Seth Curry, who's also spread the floor really well. So probably lean to the first half or fourth quarter there, but I will make it official in the morning. Just follow me at the odds, at the _odds_fellow on Twitter, and we'll get that one out.
Well, I guess I'll just give my pick right now. And I was actually going to do an NFL pick, but then I went and said, well, let me just check the college basketball.
Then we flipped it on you and we talked you off the ledge.
No, you didn't talk me off it because I think I'm still on the same course, but I might save that for the Guns Picks NFL preview that is on the Dad Bod's channel every Friday night. I give 3 to 4 picks, and I was 3-1 on the wild card picks, but I digress. I want to talk about college basketball, and the one that I look at here is LSU versus Alabama. Now I'm looking at the line right now. It looks like Alabama is -2.5, and they are unranked, and they're playing LSU, playing them at home. This is a highly motivated game. This team has lost 3 straight, and they lost a tough one against Mississippi State by 2 points. Now, I know LSU, they lost to Arkansas in their last game, but that was the return of their point guard in that spot, and I know that he was hurt, and they won the what we call the Ciroc game. The previous game. This LSU team, I'm kind of a little suspect on, especially being a ranked team, and that line is just reeking of an upset here, especially with an Alabama team that, is supposed to be a little bit better than they are. And I still think they have that motivation to go and beat their opponent in the SEC rival in this spot. So give me Alabama -2.5 as the play for the Dad Bod's Capper Breakdown. And if Shark has anything, he can either play or pass.
Nothing official right now. I do think as we went into, of course, 30 minutes of fire content on NFL divisional round football, I do think you're going to look at a Bills take potentially. I think that's a very nice look. And I do think the over in the Tampa Bay game is also a great look. So nothing official right now. And I just looked at the score sheet. Minnesota Timberwolves tanking the third quarter, now getting crushed. I always say this, and I'll say this as we segue to NBA basketball. It's a great segue. Knicks are very unpredictable. And I did look at this game, and I know you guys are watching this, and if they lose, they lose. It is what it is, one unit. I'm unenthused by the third quarter. But I did look at Minnesota on the road in a very specific spot. A prerequisite loss in the front end of a back-to-back before they beat the Sixers. They do play tomorrow against the East again, I believe, at the Hawks. And I think, I looked at this before, and the thing
I think they got smacked against the Hawks earlier in the year too.
This is the thing, right?
Yeah.
First of all, 2 points. Knicks line functionality does not matter against the Wolves. It's an out-of-conference matchup. We had this correctly. Of course, the Knicks could tank the fourth quarter right now. But I did look at this, and I saw this very specific spot where the Wolves won a home game and then went on the road in the front end back-to-back and got cleaned up against Charlotte. And then they came back against Philly the next day and won. So I'm a little tilted right now, but I will never tilt myself because we always shout Brian Bevo for being the tilt master. And I know he's probably watching. I hope he's watching. So we don't want to tilt. I'm just a little annoyed, but Wolves should push back in the fourth. And let's continue on this. Let's talk some NBA basketball.
Love it. Yeah, so let's finish up with a little
let's
NBA. I wanted to get
hoops.
some takes on you on just Eastern Conference, Western Conference, what you've seen. You and Jay do such a good job crushing the sport, breaking it down. And I know that's because you also love to watch it and care deeply about the sport, which I always appreciate it. You want to talk Eastern, Western Conference and anything that jumps out to you in either one, just in terms of, these teams at the top right now? Do you think any of them are actual contenders? In the West, you got the Suns, Warriors, Grizzlies, Jazz rounding out the top four. In the East, Bulls, Heat, Nets, Cavs. So I think in both those cases, a couple squads that maybe, people didn't think from a preseason standpoint, right? Do those guys hold on? Or are those guys serious contenders?
I think it's a great question. I mean, I think that the NBA calendar right now is going to flip. We talk about this all the time. There's a lot of teams that haven't even played each other. The Knicks haven't played the Heat once this year. There's a lot of things going on. I do think the schedule will allow a lot of shift, but I do think things will hold court more so in the West than they will in the East. I think the East, of course, the East is top heavy. Brooklyn will get there, and Brooklyn will coast. This is why people get frustrated by Brooklyn, but people don't realize Brooklyn is just coasting until they get to the playoffs, because they don't have to win 80 games to get to the playoffs. They don't even have to win 80 games to get to be a 2 seed. They have to just chill out, get their guys ready, and figure out what's going on. And, you look at other guys, like Chicago is a great example of a team that's on a clustered outlier. I think Chicago could fade down a little bit. I made a comment coming into the regular season earlier. I thought this group would be a bit of a problem, and not in a good way. I thought they might have some issues. I do think Milwaukee will come. I think Cleveland is here to stay. But I think the curiosity point here is the back end of both the East and the West playoff race. Because obviously with the play-in games, now you get 10 guys getting into the group. And I think there's just so much openness to ambiguity here. And I think we don't really know who's going to get in here, but I think there's going to be a lot going on here.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the West, I think what's so interesting is you still have the Lakers kind of plodding along, the Clippers plodding along. I think there was some positive news about Kawhi potentially being able to get back this year, maybe for a later playoff run. That can make the Clippers really dangerous and interesting. I'll never count the Lakers out. I mean, you looked at it last night. I actually kicked myself for not taking it, just in a motivated spot, short line with the Jazz coming to town, and the Lakers showed out yesterday. So if LeBron wants to put them on in the back, they're doing some of this. They're staying relevant without AD healthy. Like, again, don't. I know the Russell Westbrook experiment looks sloppy, but don't count the Lakers out.
Yeah, I mean, no, truthfully, like the West, the back end of the West is so unbelievably open. I mean, you guys saw it last year. The Warriors obviously were not, the same team, but they were in the back end of the playoff race against the Grizzlies. Lakers were right in there. And these teams can come up. However, we talk about this all the time. NBA basketball, 5-on-5, no pads. The best teams always come to the top. It's not NFL football. Like, you can't necessarily backdoor. You're not going to get in there necessarily. It's going to come down to the top teams. And I think when you look at the finals, I think we're probably going to go Dubs in 7 in the West Finals against the Suns. I think the Dubs will get there. And I think it's going to be Nets. And I think Nets will get there over over Milwaukee in a revenge spot in the ECF. But I do think it's going to be tight. And, we talk about, Jay and I was talking about, like, theoretically, the playoffs are easier to cap from the standpoint of motivation. Lines are sharp. Guys give full effort. Therefore, it's very difficult. But I do think, and I called it last year, I said the finals would be exactly what it was, Milwaukee versus Phoenix. I think it's going to be Dubs versus Nets. And I will go on record saying that.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun storyline narrative. Look, I think I haven't said this outwardly, so this will be the first time, but I do think the KD injury, a little bit of a blessing in disguise. Maybe he gets some rest, not as serious as it should have been. Seems like they're stretching the timetable a bit longer than they need to, just to be conservative with him, which I love because he's getting heavy minutes before. So now you have the chance to work Kyrie back in, get a little bit of a two-man game going, hopefully at least on the road until they figure out the home games with Kyrie and Harden. They're playing a lot of young rookies right now. Not bad to get them exposure. I think that could make you more dangerous at playoff time. Yeah, exactly. One thing I wanted to touch on too before we kick it back to guns. was totals. So I've been trying to, obviously, scaling lines and totals matter a lot in the NBA. It's a relative point, but and I think I mentioned this to you briefly. It seems like they're sailing back up. So it seems like something has been adjusted. I don't know if they're officiating more like they did in prior years, or the pace has picked up for whatever reason. But how is that affecting how you cap, NBA and NBA totals?
Well, I think first of all, I talk about this every day. I look at the lines and I look at what's going on. So when you see essentially a clustered outlier, but the Vegas lines sticking on a point for 2 matchups, and all of a sudden it skyrockets by 15 points northward, they're telling you a direct story. So I always trust the odds makers. The odds makers are telling you a story, and this is something that is so mind-boggling for me. It's a great point. It's so mind-boggling for me that people think that somehow the odds makers don't know anything. And we're going to create a narrative that we're going to beat these guys. Like, and somebody in the chat earlier actually said, what's the first thing you do as a capping point? I immediately go to the Vegas number. I want to know how they average shit. And when I watch their average, they tell me a story. It's utterly crucial to capping to just let yourself take a step back and say, you know what? I'm not as good as the books. But when you do that, you can beat the books because they tell you a story. And they tell you a story because the numbers are averages, not prices. And we talk about this all the time. This is also why people think they're beating it, because it's a price. Oh, we get them at +10, not +7. We beat the price. No, it's an average. And the average tells you a direct story. And, when we go in there, that I could go on here for literally the next 25 minutes, but I'm so passionate about it because the fallibility in sports betting exists. It's intrinsically in this idea that people look at it to beat Vegas in terms of the average, thinking it's a price, and they miss, and they will always miss, and they will always lose when it comes down to it.
Right. My question is, I was just kind of, I monitor the NBA here and there. I mean, the odds fellow is the expert, not crew. But what do you think about this Memphis Grizzlies run? Is this just a regular season fluke, or is this team actually legit and actually can contend to take the West?
Well, when it comes down to it, like I just made the comment, NBA basketball is very top heavy. We talk about this in NFL football. It's usually not, but it is. NBA basketball is very top heavy. 5-on-5 no pads. When you get down to it, when you really get down to it, it's second round playoffs, right? They're going to play the Dubs of the Suns in the second round. Mm-hmm. And you ask yourself a question, can they get there over 7 games? Mm-hmm. Probably not. Mm-hmm. Especially because they'll have to play a 7th game on the road and the whole thing. And this is where it's very easy to say this team is great. They're a juggernaut. They're a young gunner. But you ask yourself a question. In May, Game 7 on the road, will they get over the hump against the Dubs of the Suns on the road? Probably not. And it's a totally different thing than saying they're going to cover spreads right now. They're a juggernaut. They're showing signs. I think John Morant will win a title in his career. I don't think it will come this season. I don't think it will come next season either. I think it will come probably in 4 years, because this is something that people also don't consider. These guys come out of the draft so young. Their window doesn't open for 5+ years into their career. And when they get in there, they will absolutely dominate. But the thing is, the guys that are winning right now won't even be in the league. LeBron will be gone. Steph Curry, maybe in 5 years, maybe he's like the oldest man on the roster. But the guys that are winning right now, NBA championships are won on rosters between ages of 27 and 33. Not 21, 22, 23. And the Memphis core is under 24. They're ready, and they're right, and they're ready to dominate. But I don't think they're going to get past the second round of the playoffs.
Yeah, Giannis, 27 years old. John Morant, 22.
Yeah.
I think it's experience plays a factor in that too. If you actually look at the guys that are like below them, Utah Jazz, the Mavericks, the Nuggets, the Lakers, the Clippers. I mean, those teams have got playoff experience, and Ja kind of, doesn't have that taste of it. So that may play. It's just like the NFL. It may play into him not only just trying to get past, to play like the bigger teams, but get past that first round. So
Guns, another point. In the NBA playoffs, the officiating is so much different.
Yeah.
John Morant is so much functional off the bounce. he's not going to get calls. So he's got to learn how to shoot more. And he's not a bad shooter, but he's not. I mean, he's not.
No, he's dribble drive. Yeah, he's been like that since college.
100%. And you actually saw this with the Knicks last year when the Knicks went in the playoffs against the Hawks. I think they lost 5-1 or 4-1, excuse me, 4-1. But the officials stopped calling fouls, and Julius Randle couldn't dribble drive. He couldn't get his shit because they weren't calling fouls anymore. He's getting hacked in the lane, but
a lot less spacing.
He can't get it. And I do think that this Grizzlies team in the playoffs with different calls, and we see this every single year. I think one of the best ways to bet the NBA playoffs is just to unequivocally take unders. But it really, if you actually watch NBA basketball, which sometimes I don't, I'm being perfectly honest, sometimes I don't, but when you really watch it as a sport, when you get in the playoffs and you see guys like Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, even giving props to my man DeMar DeRozan balling the fuck out in Chicago, but guys that can create in no space and under duress, those guys in the playoffs function on a completely higher level. And it's something that is amazing to watch because we talk about this all the time. Like capping the sport and being a fan is totally different than playing the sport. If you guys go into the YMCA and you get hacked literally on the perimeter and you can't move, but you're still able to take one step, dribble back, and elevate over and hit a shot consistently, that is the utmost level of quality in any sort of professional basketball. And we will see that in May, and we will watch it. And that's where I get passionate. I'm getting passionate right now. Because regular season basketball is not that type of shit.
Right.
It's just when you go into May and you see these guys under absolute physical duress and they still can elevate, they still can create, and it's amazing to watch. It's amazing to watch. That's why Michael Jordan is the GOAT, because he was under perpetual physical duress his entire career.
And the strategy of a 7-game series, because you're seeing the same shit over and over again. They can figure it out. They can throw different looks at you. Like it's a completely different beast than going night to night.
100%.
Well, I think we're running out of time here as far as episode 68 goes, but I want to leave it to you, Shark. Anything you got to plug?
Nothing to plug, just respect and love, man. I appreciate you guys immensely. You know, we've done off-the-record conversations for years. Shark and the Gun was something that we came up with, obviously, in the fall, and it was unbelievable. And, you know, we say an opportunity to dominate, an opportunity conquered. And obviously came on the NFL show. Next year, we will do that a little bit differently. I got to balance my energy a little bit more. I'm doing too many things, and NBA, football, it gets all over the place. But I will figure that out because I want to continue with football. Football is a passionate thing for me. I love the sport, and we will be on there in the fall, I believe. August 31st, Guns. The Shark, the Gun, and Lock of the Rock. Anthony, amazing stuff always. I appreciate you so much. You're a great guy. You're a great guy.
We love it, guys. This was a blast. Talking shop with my guys is always a pleasure. Take us out, guys.
Yeah, man. Like you said, the Shark, Shark and the Gun, and the Lock will be back in this fall. You can also see Shark and Sports on J Money, NBA Talk every day at 1:00 on. I guess it's what's the engine? Wager Talk. So big deal there. So but that will do it for the Dad Bodds episode number 68. Until next time when we hit number 69. Till then, peace.